No. I will not stand in your way. Okay. All right. Well, hello. Hi, Kat. You're the only one here right now.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our third Thursday tea talk with the Deathwives. Half of the Deathwives today, Lauren, and I'm here with another Lauren. So it's the Lauren's hour. Welcome. Lauren is a death doula for both humans and pets, and you focus really on grief in that realm and ceremony. And you're an artist as well, which makes sense. I think ceremonialists and artists kind of go hand in hand. And you're in New York City, or well, Brooklyn, you're in New York. Um, yeah, but tell us more about you. I call her my friend, so that's kind of nice.
Yay. Same. Well, I also, I guess, work in, not I guess, but I work in a funeral home too. So a lot of the work that I do is here too. As you can see, this is the
Beautiful.
space that we have our memorials and funerals in. Um, so I do a lot of things. I also help curate memorial spaces and altars around funerals. I work with people, as Lauren said, around grief and death. I do consulting and planning for end of life and aftercare, both locally and remotely, both in person and virtually. I also am a resource doula, I guess. I don't really know how to put that into words, but that's kind of how I got to this talk today. I share a lot of resources. I meet with a lot of people, and my goal is really just, especially for doulas that are in training and wanting to explore the space, just giving them all the tools and resources they can to be successful, and just knowing what's out there and how to find these things in their community. I'm an illustrator. I create art. If you are already following me on Instagram, you can see that a lot of my art is around grief and acceptance of grief, as well as death, because it's a huge part of my life. So it's an inspiration as well to the work that I create as an artist. And yeah, I am also a retired agency model, so that's something that I don't really talk about as much. I still model occasionally, but usually it's only around things I'm interested in or that align with me. And yeah, there's a lot more, but that could take up the whole call. So I'll just leave it at that.
No, and that's why you're on this call with us today, is because you do have so many resources, so many ways to support people. I just have to show off. I'm wearing one of her designs. I'm a huge Nick Cave fan, and it says I'd rather be crying to Nick Cave, which there you go. It's my ultimate grief. I always say, Into My Arms will probably be one of my funeral songs. So yeah. Oh, Jay loves it too. Cool.
Yay. I just found out before I forget. I just found out at book club the other night at Morbid Anatomy. I did my silent book club of death meeting for the month at Morbid Anatomy. Somebody reminded me that you could have your ashes pressed into a vinyl.
hmm
And I was like, immediately, without even thinking, oh, great, I could be a Nick Cave album. And everyone started laughing at me. And I was like, I'm not embarrassed. I
No,
actually
I think
think that
that's
would be
amazing. Everyone, listen to me and cry. I am now ingrained in this. Like,
right.
yeah, amazing. I love it. So you kind of touched on a lot of why we're here today. So many people are going through death doula training. There is a huge movement of wanting to do this. And then it's kind of like okay, and now what? Like, what are my other resources? What are my other tools? And so that's what we're doing today is we're going to talk about how to really become part of your community, because that is how you're going to find some of your resources as well. But really, how do you um, support yourself and your work and make sure that this movement continues to grow and that there's space for people to come to have these conversations, to feel comfortable in. Um, Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a lot of the work. Me and you are going to be doing a class next week, really focusing on using our intuition and trusting the intuitive knowledge that we all carry, but like looking for those signs and symbols and really incorporating this into what we do. And so these are so many different ways that we can incorporate life, death, grief into how we do this work and how we show up for it. So I'm just going to start sharing this slide here. Um, there we go. Okay. So, do you want to take over from here?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to just kind of say next when I'm done with the slide and I feel like we can move through it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. So the reason why I'm here today specifically to talk is about community death and grief care and ways that we can connect to our community as doulas or doulas that are learning how to become doulas and make the best of our skills and gain more skills, in turn be able to share those with our community to people that maybe aren't interested in working in this space but need support in these areas of death and grief care. Um, so next. Okay, so one of the main ways that I started doing this work with sharing resources was 3 years ago when I was interested in becoming a death doula. I just had the idea of starting a Facebook page because I thought, hey, there's probably other people out there that want to learn how to do this work as well. And so I'll just share what I know, kind of share my journey. So I started a page and I just started reading every book I could get my hands on about this work, everything that interested me, whether it was disposition, grief, death care, end of life, just anything, just really anything about death and anything that could help me become a better person in this space to help others. And so the first part of that was sharing my books and everything I was reading and what I thought of it. And then it was sharing my education and going to school and what I had found looking for schools. And this group got really big. And now I have like over 6,000 members in this group. And I think that that's amazing because even though it's not a huge, huge group, it's still 6,000 people interested in doing this work. And that is a lot of people that want to help others in this space. So I just thought that was incredible that we've gotten to this point. But in that group, my main goal was resource sharing. So that's how this all began with me wanting to gather tools and share with other people because I have no fear reaching out and talking to people. I am not afraid of emailing or messaging or any of that. I have no fear of that. A lot of that probably comes from my history of being a model and being sent to numerous casting calls and putting myself out there and continuously being rejected. So I guess I just kind of like reached out to people that interested me, people that I thought would be useful to learn from and share resources with. And a lot of those were authors. And so being a person that loves to read so much, I thought, that would be really great to find out if there were a book club in my area that was kind of reading around the topic of death. Turns out there wasn't. So I started one. And I was lucky enough to connect with Catherine from Death Project Manager. And she is the facilitator. Yay! She is the facilitator for the Silent Book Club of Death in LA. So she kind of walked me through the process of how to start one in New York. And that was a little over a year ago. So yeah, so now we meet in, here at my work, funeral homes, cemetery chapels. We've been meeting regularly at Morbid Anatomy Library, which is, if you haven't heard of it before, it's an amazing library with everything around like death, in general, spirituality, witchcraft. I mean, you name it, it's all there. So we meet and we discuss the books we're reading. There's no set there's no set like reading for the month. And then we just kind of openly talk about what we're reading and things that may have come up while we were reading the books. And in a way, it's discussing our mortality because a lot of these books are about death. So sometimes these pull things up in us that we want to have those discussions afterwards. So starting a book club is a really great way to if there isn't one already based on death in your area, to be able to have those conversations. And in turn, I always say that there's safe spaces for people that are grieving because, like I mentioned, we mostly meet in, funeral homes, cemetery chapels, and things like that. And sometimes the people that come to these book clubs have been here before for another reason and they are grieving. And so, it creates kind of a safe space to have those conversations about death and grief.
So, you said that there's no like set book. So it's not like, okay, we're all going to read this book and discuss it. Everybody gets to read their own book and talk about it.
Yeah, when I have them at the the funeral home and the cemetery chapel, I have to bring my own collection um, of books, which is pretty broad. There's a lot of different things in there, but then people can either bring their own book or they could pick from my pile. And then at Morbid Anatomy, obviously they have an amazing library, so you can just kind of pick whatever. And I never bring books because I want to pick from their books. Um, but yeah, there's never like like most book clubs have, everyone reads the same book and then talks about it. We don't do that. It's just kind of a free for all. It's really just a space to be able to talk about mortality and read whatever books make the most sense to us at the time. So
I actually love that because I have like 20 books sitting next to me in this pile. And I'm thinking, okay, if somebody else would read Care of the Soul by Thomas More for me right now, and then we could have a discussion about it and they could say, oh, this is what I read. And then I could be like, oh, I'm reading this book and this is what I'm reading. That would be amazing. And I never thought about that before as like, yeah, you can have a book club and everyone reads different books, but based on death and mortality. And then we kind of like do a brain dump of everything that we've learned and how it's made us feel. And whenever we share that, it opens up that space for like, oh, me too. Like I'm feeling that. This is what I'm going through. So it's like
yeah.
such a cool way to connect people in maybe not a way that I ever would have thought of like, yeah, just come hang out, we'll read some books, and then we're going to talk about it and see what you have to say.
There is never a dull moment. I mean, really, like the discussions we have afterwards are so interesting. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there tends to be a theme.
Mm,
Sometimes people will bring their own books and they all kind of make sense together. And the conversation is so fluid. It's such a, I think, I think a lot of us have noticed, and it again goes back to that intuition. It's like, you'll notice all these synchronicities in these spaces. And yeah, I look forward to book club every month because they're just so magical. Even the parts that are griefy, we all feel safe enough to talk about that there. And so there's a lot of magic that's uncovered.
yeah. I mean, there's magic in grief too, because
Yeah.
it's love, it's processing, it's powerful, especially when you're able to do it in community versus
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
that's the
It's
thing that we that when I'm explaining to people what happens at book club, I've had people say, "Oh, that sounds sad. That sounds morbid." I'm like, just come, like you don't understand like until you come to one. Like they are not sad. They're very magical. I mean, it's yes, there are sometimes conversations that are sad, but they're so beautiful too, because there is so much magic and love and grief. And I love to bear witness to those conversations because they're so sacred, not anything I can really talk about publicly, but just you know when you know.
yeah, yeah. How long does the session last? Like how long do people come to these? Is it like a
So
2 hour meeting? Is
it's about 2 hours if we're just doing book club, but Morbid Anatomy likes to do two things together.
hmm
So I'll end up having the silent book club portion first. And then the second half we'll play Death Deck.
Hmm.
And so again, like, we go right into from reading, we're done, the alarm goes off, and then, all right, time to play Death Deck. I explain to them what we're doing. We break up into groups, and sometimes we kind of move around and switch groups, but usually we just get so sucked into the conversation that it never happens. But we also have sometimes collaborative death cafes with book club as well. So those tend to be a little bit longer just because we have two activities happening. They tend to be more like 3 hours long, but the time really does fly by.
I'm sure. Yeah, this sounds amazing. And the fact that, I mean, we always tell people you can start a death cafe where you are, you should do this, but this concept just feels different and it feels like a very inviting space, especially right now because you can't help but slow down, right? You're forced into slowing down by reading this book, by having this person to person conversations. And I don't know. I know that it's mortality and grief, but it also feels like a safe space to be in right now when there's just so much chaos going on. It's like, here, come to the cozy little corner. Let's read our books. Let's talk about it. And then let's have more conversations, around it with the Death Doula deck or whichever deck you have.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, and like this, well, I'll get to the next part that I'm going to tell you in a minute, but sometimes in these spaces, like the only rule that I ever enforce is we're going to read silently for an hour. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else is kind of free range, we kind of just go with the flow. And I always tell people at the beginning, you can share if you want. You are not obligated to share anything. This is a safe space. You can just be, or you can talk, And so most people do want to talk and share. But some people just don't. Some people they just want to be in community with people who aren't afraid to have those conversations and hear other people talk, but know that wherever they are at that point in time, they're safe to be there.
Hmm.
Um, but what I was going to say, building on to the Death Deck game, is that we actually are having a death game night at Morbid Anatomy this weekend, and it's not just the Death Deck, but it's all death themed games, card games.
Oh, that's so fun.
So
There's a
so
lot out there. I was surprised that there's more and more like my friend got me Death by Coconuts. I don't know if you've seen that one yet.
mm-mm.
It's you have to guess which had the most deaths to it. So it'll be like you pick three cards and your team has to go, okay, did more people die from the plague? Do more people die from hippo attacks? Or did more people die in this certain battle during the Civil War? And so it's really interesting because you have to think about it as like, wow, what killed the most people? And my kids love it. They think it's fun because it's just like numbers, but it is that like death acceptance of death happens all the time, everywhere. Hippos kill so many people each year. I've learned a lot from this game too. Yeah, but it's called Death by Coconuts. So coconuts kill
Oh,
people too.
oh yeah, yeah. Coconuts definitely kill people. The hippo part I didn't really think about, but I'm not surprised. And
Hundreds,
oh my
hundreds a
gosh,
year.
I'm curious if that's going to be part of our game night. I'm collaborating with another death care worker here for that, and um, she has so many of them. So this is mostly her thing, but I'm so excited to be able to choose between these games and play.
Yeah.
And that's just another way that you can have those conversations. Even if it's a fun conversation and you're playing a game or you're reading a book, like you're still bringing like mortality awareness to your community. And there's so many people that you would not like you. I mean, okay, so last year at Greenwood, we had a death deck night. And Lisa, one of the creators, came out and we had like almost 150 people show up,
Wow.
and they were all like mostly younger people, and they were all dressed up and like it festive, and I just was like, wow, this is so magical. All these people came out to play Death Deck and they're having a good time, and it just really opened my mind to the possibilities of other ways that we could have these conversations. And I think that, as you know, New York is just chock full of creative ways of discussing death. There's so
Hmm.
many different amazing things that are happening here in this space. Very theatrical things, very artistic things. I'm very happy to be here to be a creative and a death care worker and be able to see all the different ways that people are bringing other people together through this. But I see these and I'm inspired by them, and I'm thinking like people could do these where they live too. There's so many ways to have these conversations and make it fun. You know.
Hmm. And it sounds like people want this. That's the thing is when you create this space, it's like, oh, yes, I've been wanting this and I just had no idea that I wanted this. Like to have that many people show up to play the death deck, that just shows you like people are interested in this. They want to have conversations about it. They just don't have the space to do so. And so creating the space is step number one.
Yes, exactly. Okay, I think we can move past this one. Oh, okay. So, um, a lot of the gatherings that happen that I was just talking about, a lot of us, other death care workers and death doulas, we go to those. We love going to those because it's like, ooh, something fun that's work related, where we can gain inspiration and be in community with other people that do this kind of work. So, for people that are working in this space, um, it can also be very isolating because there's a lot of things we don't talk about that we deal with at work, and we carry our own grief from the work that we do. And so being around other people in community and meeting with other death workers is such a wonderful thing because it just it fills my cup, being around other people, especially when our work is working in a grief space so often. And I think it's a form of self-care, honestly. Being around other death workers that you connect with in your community is such a wonderful way to kind of revive yourself after working in these spaces.
Yeah.
But it's also a really great way to bring people that are interested in learning about these spaces as well. Like for example, here once a month we have a death doula gathering, and it's hosted by my friend Emma, who is the founder, I believe, of All Is Well Initiative. And then I believe the other person is Virginia Chang. And it's so great. There's people that are learning to become death doulas, people that are interested in becoming death doulas, and they come and they talk and they share stories. And there's like snacks, like always snacks. There's always going to be snacks. But it's just another way that we can have conversations and exchange tools with each other and resources. And it's not completely limited to doulas, but it's also, for people that are just curious about what it's like to be a death doula. Maybe they are thinking about it, but they're not sure. So, you come to a gathering like that and you get a little more information.
Yeah. I love that because we don't have people to decompress with about the work that we do very often. And it's only other people who are in this space who get it. And I don't want to say it's not safe to talk to outsiders, to the normies. I say the deathies and the normies. They may not want to receive these conversations that you're having. Um, about 3 weeks ago, I went to my friend's birthday party, and she's conventional funeral director. She's an embalmer. She owns her own funeral home. And there was other funeral directors there from other funeral homes, and we were all at this cool punk bar, and we were like dancing. And then all of a sudden, we were like, "Remember COVID?" And it was the first time a lot of us had gotten together as funeral directors and talk about what we went through in COVID. And we were like dancing with our arms around each other, just having tears flow down our face because it was like, oh my gosh, like you understand because you walked this path too. And we didn't realize how much we needed to just like get that out and talk about like the grief that we've carried all these years, with all the I've been around death for a long time and I have never seen this many dead people at once, and none of us did. And our whole goal is to do ceremonies and all this stuff. And we were like, No ceremonies, just overdoses, suicides, and COVID over and over and over again. And so it was like not the space that we were expecting to do this in, but it was one of the best feelings, like to just cry together, to say, yeah, I see you. I went through that too. And the same thing with death doulas. Like death doulas who have experienced things can share those stories for people who are just starting to come up in it, because there have been people who've done this work. Like I said, I started a funeral home 20 years ago when I was 20 years old. So I've been in this space for a really long time, and I'm seeing so many people joining. And that's why I'm an educator. That's why I educate, because I just want people to know this. But how inspiring it can be for the death doulas to share, like, this is what I've been able to do. These are some of the families I've served. Here's some of the stories of what we've done. That's only just going to make the future death doulas even better, because they get to hear about our experiences, learn new knowledge. Yeah, I just never even thought about this. And then you're bringing it up now, and I was like, oh, that's kind of what happened to us a few weeks ago, was an impromptu gathering for death people who didn't have the space to grieve what we went through, or to really even just talk openly about it. Um, a big part of like the COVID grief for us is how many suicides and overdoses we were seeing, and how nobody was talking about it. And so that's kind of what we're all starting to do now, is like, yes, and also this happened during COVID, and we're still not talking about that. We're not dealing with that grief. But we wouldn't have those conversations if we didn't have each other. And that's what this group is. It's like you wouldn't have these conversations anywhere else, and they're so important to have. So awesome
Yeah.
introduction to this. And hopefully some of you, especially if you live in a bigger city, like collectives, we need them. I always say, if you're a death doula and you're like, hi, I'm going to present to you on this, and you're just one person, people might be like, okay, whatever. There's 5 of you standing in front of the room, and we're death doulas. Now people are listening differently. And so forming these collectives, doing it together, there can never be competition, because there's not
No.
enough of us to have competition, first off. But this is we're still in that like movement growth stage. And so what we can do more than anything right now is support each other and be there for each other and give each other the knowledge and say, hey, you could do it this way or whatever. That's how
Yeah.
this work is going to catch on too.
Yeah, and I think that I say this a lot. I don't believe in competition in this work. There's no room for that. There's no time for that. Um, we need to be working together because we're so much better together. And the more friends that I gather locally, the more friends that I gather nationally, internationally, the bigger my group of doulas and death workers gets, that it's just so magical to see like how well we all work together, and things get done so much differently when we're in unity with each other and community with each other. And I don't want to do any of this alone. I can, but I don't want to. I want to pull my friends into everything and make them do things with me. I just feel like they have knowledge that I don't have. Maybe I have knowledge that they don't have. And if you pull all these parts together, it just creates this whole beautiful collective, like you were saying. And a lot of us do our own thing independently, but we don't really. We're always doing things together. And it just feels good to be able to do that in the way that most of us in this space anyway have such big open hearts that we're so accepting of others. And we're constant, our hearts are constantly open because of the spaces that we work in. And so letting other people into our lives and into our community is so easy. And I just honestly, I couldn't imagine it being any other way. And we do so many amazing things together. And so I think community building with people that are in the same field as you, in the same space, and you don't have to all be doing the same thing, just all the different parts that make sense together. It's such a beautiful thing. We're a village. So
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It takes a village. We are that village, so we have to stay connected. And this kind of group could be online. It doesn't have to be in person because I know there's some towns where you're the only death doula in the village right now. And so even creating these where I loved how you said like the more friends I make in this, like the more friends and then the bigger and the bigger. And that's how it is. It's like you might start with this online group and then somebody else is inviting someone and somebody else is inviting someone and it becomes this a collective, an online collective, and then maybe you'll find more people locally. And yeah, it's just about being open, having an open heart and saying, "Oh, I'm in the same club as you. Let's be in the club together." Here,
yeah, and
come on over.
that's exactly what that group was started for on Facebook that has 6,000 people in it. Those are all my community. Like they're all over the world. They're all doing different things, but that's my community, and I have standards for my community. They have to show up as you are, but also you also have to have an open heart. And if you don't, you probably don't belong in that space. And there's a lot, I mean, I've had people who aren't so open and aren't so kind to me. A lot of it has to do with my appearance. Being heavily tattooed, as we know, hasn't always been acceptable in this industry, and sometimes I still get looked at that way, and most people don't. They will look past that and say, "Oh, you're here because you're doing the work. It doesn't matter what you look like." But it does still surprise me that. Well, I mean, I guess it doesn't surprise me. It does still happen though, and so in my mind, those are all my friends, and those are my community, no matter where they are. And I connect with people locally, nationally, globally to have conversations about death. And to me, it's just we're just all doing the same thing, and there's no need for any sort of competition or judgment. And so that's just how I look at it.
Yeah. What's the Facebook group called so that people who are here and watching the recording can also join? And then you could also put the handle in the chat if you want, but
I don't actually know the name off of the top of my head. It's like it,
I can try and find it.
it's got my illustration as the cover photo, but it's something like because I don't get to spend as much time as in there as I used to. So it's if you find it, you'll see it has one of my illustrations in the back of it, and it's the journey as a end of life worker, death doula. But you'll know when you see it. I should have it memorized by now, but it is a long title. And I started it and then never thought about the name of it again.
Let me see if I can find it. I'll keep looking because there's a
Yeah,
few here.
it's got
Um,
like little skulls and flowers on the pattern. If you see it, you'll be like, oh, that's
yeah.
that's it. Um, but it's a private group. It used to be a public group, but I had to make it private because, oh my gosh, you cannot imagine the spam that goes on there if you don't make it a private group. Um, so now it's like a little more work. I have to like give myself time each week to get in there and work on it to like approve members that have answered the questions correctly and all that stuff. Because you have to make sure they're real people. Otherwise, you wake up to like 50 spam messages. So that got old really quick. It's private now.
And it's really easy for people to jump on this like, ew, death. What are you guys doing over here? And there's still some funeral directors out there who really don't like end of life workers or death doulas. And we've
Yeah.
had we've had people in Death Wives like write little hate messages under some of our stuff, and we're just like, why? Like, what's your problem with having these open conversations about death and dying? Like, why do you have to come into this space and just talk about it like it's the worst thing ever and that we're going to, oh gosh, traumatize
Well,
families with this talk? And it's like, actually, it's the opposite.
yeah. And I mean, there's also we've had like religious people come in and say like things.
Mhm.
And we've also, and really like my goal is that I don't want the spam. Okay, that's an obvious thing. But there's people in this group that aren't death doulas. There are people that have terminal illnesses in this group, and they've come here to have a safe space to talk about what they're going through, connect with other doulas possibly. Some doulas are looking for other doulas in different cities and resources and things like that. And we don't want everybody to see that. You know, there's some things that we want to share with that group because again, you can't always share things that happen in your work publicly. But you know that in a space where you're talking about death and other people are there to talk about death, you can share those things
Right.
to a degree. Again, you know, to a degree, but other people won't get it the same way that people in the space that work in the space will get it. So it's really important to me that it's guarded and that you know, we don't have outside looking in sort of situations happening.
Yeah, yeah. And I did find it. It is a long name. It's
Yeah.
the death doula and end of life caregiver journey, becoming a death worker. That's the name of the group. So, death doula and end of life caregiver journey, becoming a death worker.
Can you like show them the background so they see that it has like a little, yeah, that's a little illustration. So if you see that, that's the one.
There you
It's
go,
got one of
guys.
my little older
Join that group.
drawings. Yeah.
I'm in it, so you'll see me. Yeah, there's over 6,000 members. And it looks like too, this is a great place for people to look for other resources and say like, hey, do we have death doulas in Minnesota? Hey, like, because I get those questions all the time and then we'll post it and say, hey, do we know anyone out here? So it's great because it's like that mycelium of connection everywhere. And that's amazing that there's 6,000 people in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is another great one more focused on at like new death doula work or a death if you've become a death doula and you're kind of like what do I do now, where do I go from here, um, the best thing that you can do to get started working as a death doula is always volunteer. Volunteer with a hospice. That is always my number one recommendation for new doulas. Have you ever worked with a person who has a terminal illness? Have you ever worked with a person that is dying? If you have not done that, you might not want to just jump right into it, even with the certification, because yes, you understand how to do that. But the experience is so, so important. And a lot of certifications aren't doing clinicals because they're online, and that's okay because they're giving you those skills. But the next step should always be volunteer because you want to be able to have that hands-on training and you know see how you feel about it because sometimes and it's okay that not everybody realizes that maybe they're not comfortable working with people at the end of their life, but you still want to help people. There's so many different things that you can do. You could be a consultant. You can help people get their affairs in order. You can help people plan their ceremonies. You can help people, you know, families, you know, figure out like legacy projects and things like that. Being a death doula doesn't necessarily mean that you have to work with the dying. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sit vigil. There's so many other ways to be a doula. Um, this was how I first got started because somebody told me that this was the best way to get started. I had previously worked, or not worked, I guess. I actually got into the space originally because I took care of two grandmothers at the end of their life when I was really, really young and realized that I had the capacity for it. So that's how I got started. So going back into hospice care or, you know, as a volunteer, really just kind of got me back on that path. And I never actually became an in-home death doula. I went straight to disposition. So, you know, but I do help people around grief and I do help people plan their end of life. I do help people get their affairs in order. I work as a consultant. Um, remotely and, locally. And I work with pets too, because you can also make those end of life plans and aftercare plans for pets, and people do need that support. So whatever way seems to make the most sense, you could do that. So, you could reach out to funeral homes. Again, depending on where you live, that could go one of two ways, but it never hurts to ask. Um, you could reach out to other forms of disposition, like, crematories, just make those connections so that when you're working with the family, I know that a lot of people are interested in doing home funerals. So knowing what comes next and what's legal in your state and all those things are important, and making those connections are important because it's so much easier when you have all those tools together. When something comes up and you're hired and you go, all right, well, I know I know these people. I know, I've had these conversations with local businesses. I know what's available to me. You should always know what's going on where you live, as a doula. So, um, yeah, I mean, same with pet death, making those connections with, vets and in-home euthanasia doctors, various forms of disposition, depending on what's available in your area.
Yeah. Definitely doing the outreach where you live, because you can learn all the cool things that are available here in Colorado. And then where you are, it's like, oh, I can't do that. We don't have that available. Um, but knowing what you have around you, and also what are the possibilities. Maybe people didn't realize that they could have a green burial there in their city cemetery, but you would have to ask your cemetery and know that information. One thing I'm just going to say with hospice is a lot of people that come into this space, like you, have gone through a death, and it's usually a family member and they've taken care of them, or it was really traumatic and really bad. And so they're going into this space with a very personal, reason. But volunteering in hospice, now you don't have that connection, right, to the person. And so it's going to be a unique experience versus what most people, I think, were drawn into this space for. But so we always say volunteer at hospice too. That's a must if you want to be a death doula. But now I'm telling death doulas, don't tell them that you're a death doula. Volunteer
Mm.
as a volunteer, because there have been numerous students of mine who have come back and said they wouldn't let me be a volunteer because I'm a death doula. And there's still kind of this hospice likes us, but hospice is confused. How can they support each other? But I think it's almost like if a hospice RN decides, well, I want to be a volunteer, they probably would make this boundary of, okay, but you can only do, grief support or hold these circles. You're not going to do the hands-on. The other reason is because more and more hospices also think death doulas are volunteers, period, that they are doing volunteer work. And we won't ever be able to make this a legitimate business if we're all just volunteering. So I'm not saying you have to lie or anything like that, but going into a hospice space, I'm now kind of telling death doulas, volunteer as a human. Don't volunteer
Hmm.
as I'm going to become a death doula, because there's still kind of this weird pushback of well, are you going to cross these boundaries? Are they going to, are you going to tell your clients to hire you through hospice and that kind of thing? And they did a recent survey last year of how many hospices want to introduce death doulaship into their business. 6%. So we're still really trying to see how we can incorporate and fill in those gaps for hospice, because we know that that's what we're doing. But yeah, I always was volunteer, volunteer, please volunteer, but don't necessarily wear your death doula shirt
Right.
going into these spaces, because it's been interesting. I had one student who was they would only let me answer the phones because they knew I was a death doula, and they told me that I couldn't have one-on-one clients as a volunteer. And I was like, well, that's shitty. Like, that doesn't help anybody. But yeah, just
Yeah.
throwing that out there.
And that's kind of the reason why I stopped volunteering. Not that this is like helping getting people to like, hey, yeah, go volunteer. But that's like part of the reason why I stopped volunteering is because and again, it could just be based on my appearance, was always treated a certain way when I was there.
Mhm.
And I kind of felt like, well, I'm not really here for you guys. I'm here for them, and they like when I'm here. And I would bring music that they liked and soothing and hold their hand and, brush their hair and things like that. And I think that I never openly said I was a death doula because I worked in this care home, or not worked, but I was volunteering specifically in this care home, and it was mostly memory care. And I I really struggled with, like, I wanted to sneak food into them. Not like unsafe things, but like I just, it was hard because like you learn about giving someone dignity in death. And sometimes you go into these spaces and you're not seeing that. You're not seeing that. And this is something I've actually never talked about publicly, but it really put a strain on my heart, because it didn't feel where I was like they were treated like people. And there was like times where one of my patients would have like, dying of stomach cancer, and they didn't want to eat, and there would be pressure for them to eat, and I'm like, why are you? Their stomach hurts. They are dying of cancer. Why are you forcing them to eat? And things like that, where I was just like, if they don't want to eat, don't make them eat, But again, that's not my place to say. It's just if you are if you are like more of the kind of person that feels for people at the end of their life, it's going to be hard at times to be a hospice volunteer. But I think that just it is a necessary tool to learning how to be with somebody that is dying.
Mhm.
But it's not going to be easy, and not for the reasons you think.
Yeah. And I think too, I've taught many death doulas and done many training programs, but you can't understand the human psyche or condition until you are with them. And some people are going to be absolutely horrible because they're mad that they're dying. There's going to be some people that are lovely and so accepting of this. But that's the role of a death doula, is being able to step in where they are and just walk next to them. And I think hospice is one of the only places you can do that because they serve the whole community. It's not like it's just this one group. Most hospices are also nonprofits. They take Medicare. So it's not just like the affluent group or the poor or whatever, but it really, for me, it introduced me to family dynamics. So I
Hmm.
knew everything about like, okay, how to make somebody comfortable. What are the things I could do? Doing hospice work, and especially when you go into somebody's house, that's when I really had this like, okay, like this family needs support here. I didn't realize that that would be so much of my job. The dying person, they're doing great. Their
Yeah.
body, they're on their journey. Um, but yeah, that's why I did. I'm trying to think how long I volunteered for. I guess a little over a year. And it was eye-opening for me because death doulaship isn't all sunshine and rainbows and roses because you have to work with human beings and where they're at in that moment. And yeah, I can't say that enough, that you need to volunteer in hospice, but just don't necessarily scream that you're a death doula and that's why you're volunteering, because there is still that misconception that, oh, death doula is just a volunteer that helps also. And it's like, no, we actually have a much larger skill set than what hospice volunteers do and have learned. So yeah, and definitely reaching out to the funeral homes can be tricky depending on where you live, but just meeting them That's my thing is like in one of our classes, you would have to call your local funeral home and like pretend that somebody's died, ask the questions and figure out like what's their vibe. First off, is this somebody that I would want to send a family to? Because if there's only one funeral home in your town and they're horrible, call the funeral home that's 30 minutes away. Maybe they're eco-friendly, maybe it's female run, who knows? But we don't have to also just stick with what's next door. Like, but you have to do the work to figure that out.
Yeah. And a lot of what I do as a consultant for people, virtually, is I have to find things in other states, and I have to talk to people, and I really base my decision because I'm not physically there on how a person be like is, like you have to kind of feel it out and be like um be able to determine like, is this person going to be kind to my client? Is this person going to be compassionate with my client? And so I think that definitely getting comfortable with making those phone calls and having those conversations is important. You could end up having an entire business of being a consultant for people, and you have to make phone calls. I personally, I don't love being on the phone. But I will do whatever it takes to make sure that my client is taken care of because that's why I'm here.
All right, my cat really is loving this conversation. And he's like, I want to be part of it. Um,
Hi.
this is Graham, everybody. Some of you may know him. He likes to show up in classes. And sphinxes are really weird. If you've never had one, they like to perch. They're percher cats. Yeah, and the dispositions, I think, is also, you talked about that. Maybe water cremation isn't available in your state, but it's available in the state next door. So being able to know, like, okay, you can use this funeral home and they can get a disposition permit for another state where we can now do the water cremation that your mom wanted so badly. But most funeral homes aren't going to tell you that. So, like, the consulting part is a really, really big, because it's not just the education, it's I can actually help guide you and give you all the choices. Like, do you want conventional? Do you want embalming? This funeral home's amazing. This cemetery, beautiful. Do you want water cremation? Well, they do it, 2 states over, and you would just have to pay for a flight, all sorts of stuff. Natural organic reduction is being legalized more and more everywhere. Right now, it's still very much the West Coast in Colorado that's offering it, but it doesn't matter if it exists, it's available. And that's what people don't know. And so being the consultant that can really open people's eyes to all of this, then they're going to get exactly the kind of funeral that they wanted versus going in blind and having a really bad funeral, a really bad experience, and focusing on that part of your grief versus the person and the experience and the loss. So it really is
Yeah.
crucial.
Yeah, and I generally, whether it's for humans or for pets, because I do both, I will have a discovery call and really just be like, why are you here? Like, what's your goal? Like, what do what brought you to me to want to, and then kind of just breaking things up into, like conversations weekly or biweekly, coming up with a plan, doing all that legwork, setting up paper days for when you're just on the phone all the time. And then like, having designated times to have those conversations specifically about those things, because you can't do it all in one day and you can't always do it all in a couple weeks, depending on how things are going. So, you got to get really comfortable with making phone calls and reaching out to people, because the more that you do it, the more normal it becomes. And it's like literally like 80% of what I do is talk to other people either on Zoom, Google, the phone, and there's so many amazing resources out there, and various ways of disposition and memorials. I guess I could have added that to this slide, but if you want to find out more about what's available for aftercare, there's so many things out there. It's just reach out. What's the worst they could do? Not answer back.
Yeah.
Okay. which brings me to this. I I feel fortunate enough that I get to have conversations with people all over the world about the work that they're doing in death care. And I know a lot of that has to do with the group that I have and the people that end up coming to it that are starting a business somewhere around the death space, that are making memorializations that are very unique and very thoughtful. I wish I could share more about that because my goodness, I have so many amazing conversations with people that are just doing such beautiful things. And I share them every chance I get, because I want you guys to know that they exist too and that you can bring them to your client. One of the things that I can talk about now because it's, going into production is something called life books. I met with this gentleman who created this way of putting together a book that would last generations. It is really, really well made. It's like a dictionary. I mean, the thing will stand the test of time. It will be there in 200 years. But it's a way for people to go online and put together a story about their person. You can add collaborators to it. You can add pictures to it. And then eventually it becomes a printed book that you can pass on through your family. Um, he did this as a way to honor his father. That's why this started. And much like most of us that are in this field, we came here usually because of something that happened in our own life, some sort of messy grief, some sort of experience with death that we thought, I'd like to do a better job for someone else than what happened to me. But there's people that aren't working in this space, but have had these griefy moments where they thought, I'd really like to be able to honor my person in this way, but it doesn't exist. So I'm creating it. And um, being able to have those conversations with people is just absolutely amazing. And so that's another reason why I love that group that I have so much is that I can share things like that with people, you know. So if you see somebody doing something in your community or beyond that is, that you think is beautiful or, very thoughtful in the grief space, don't be afraid to reach out to them. And, tell them that you're admiring the work that they're doing. Everybody loves to hear that what they're doing is making a difference. There's not one person that does not like to hear that. So I just, I think that just getting over that kind of fear, reaching out to people, because I know I've had this conversation with a lot of people. They're just saying that, oh, I don't know how to start the email. I'm like, just do it. Just send the email, send the instant message, like send whatever, just tell them that you appreciate them. That alone starts the conversation.
Mhm.
People like to feel appreciated. So, yeah, again, I could talk about this all day, but we can, if you want to talk about something next, go ahead.
No, I mean, we're almost done already. Me and you could probably talk again. Each slide we could talk for an hour about. But
Yeah.
what you said is so true. When people reach out to me, I mean, I wonder too, like, are people like, oh, they'll never read this email or whatever? But like, I appreciate anytime somebody's like, oh, what you're doing is cool. And as you know, most of the time I'm like, what you're doing is cool. Like, let's do cool things together. But yeah, it takes that little, hey, like I see you and I love what you're doing. And that does, it means the world to me and other people in this space to be like, oh, you're seeing that I'm doing this work and you're liking it. And oh, what are you doing over there? Oh, that's really cool too. Like, let's talk about it. Our last couple Tea Talk guests have been from other countries and shared some of their traditions or shared how grief is done. And that's the other thing is like how we celebrate lives, the rituals, the richness of human beings. If we just stay in our little corner, we'll never learn any of this. And there's so much richness that we can bring into our spaces by just learning what works in other communities and like what are their rituals. And there's some people I've worked with who, they're like, oh, my background is this. And I was like, oh, did you know traditionally they would do this, this, and this, if you still lived in that country? And most of the time they have no idea and then want to immediately incorporate that into their funerals, into their grief work. So it's such a beautiful thing to like connect with people outside again of our circle, but also learn from people that are in other countries and the way that they're doing things, because it's so unique to what we're doing here in the States for the most part. Yeah, and all it takes is like a little, hey, I'm doing this over here, and I see you're doing that over there, and that's awesome. And I always write back and I'm like, you're awesome. So
Yeah.
everyone watching this, everybody who's here, be a little bit courageous. Make the space if it doesn't already exist. Make it. I mean, that's pretty much it. And then reach out to people. I always like to just say, be the mycelium, be the connectors, because people need that connection for this movement to continue to grow. We need the community, not just ourselves, but the community around us. And it's really not hard. It's just stepping outside that box and really kind of putting yourself out there. But that's the way that we're going to make a difference. So, yeah. Thank you, Lauren, for joining us today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And as always, we will see you next month on our third Thursday. And until then, be well, take care of each other, reach out to a stranger and tell them they're doing amazing things, and take care of yourselves. Bye.
Bye.